is my painting station. I keep a light here for my paints. And in the drawer here, I keep my watercolors or my Stay Wet palette if I'm doing acrylic work. And my paper towels underneath the desk there. This is my painting station. I even keep my water bowls in the drawer. On my paper, I'm not sure on camera you can see, but I have a very light sketch of what I'm going to be painting. I do my sketch work in Photoshop and then print out the sketch onto the watercolor paper. Here I've added some water to the paper, and then now I'm going in and adding texture by just dabbing in paint to get some texture to the roof of the car that I'm painting. As you can see, the texture is being added here. So the paint really tries to stay confined to the area where the wet paper was at. It's a very good technique to use. Throughout the entire painting, I'm using a rigger brush. It holds a lot of paint, and yet I can paint very thin lines with it. Most of my painting work is done in detail, so it works out really well for me. Once again, I'm adding just water down first. I lay a base of water, and then I go in and dab in the texture of the paint. And here I'm adding some shadowing. I'm going to use a hairdryer to dry it off, and then I put another layer on top of it. Just like in Photoshop, I just work in layers. So when it's dry, you can lay in another layer of darker paint right on top of it. Always working from light to dark. Now I'm changing the scene here a little bit. I've got a little bit completed, primarily because my camera stopped recording for some reason. So now I've switched to my iPhone to record with, which I think actually works very well. Keep in mind this is speeded up 8 times. So I know I don't paint this fast. Here again, I paint the outer edges because I want it to show an edge, and now I'm layering in another layer on top of it, so you're still seeing that edge. If I didn't, I would have wetted the entire area and then painted it in. You can see the sketch a little bit better here of what I'm working on. I'm using Winsor Cotman paints, watercolor paint. There I've dabbed it out with a paper towel. That's another way to add texture, is to go ahead and put your paint down and then dab it with a paper towel. And if you notice there also, I used a piece of paper to sample my paint before I put it down. So I usually cut up one piece of the watercolor paper and then use it for paint swabs, I guess you would call them, or swatches, paint swatches, I guess would be the best term for them. I'm not showing me mixing the colors. I probably should, but I only have one camera, so I apologize for that. I'll probably do a video just on me mixing the colors. Sometimes I work with a very wet brush, a lot of water in it, like I am here. Sometimes I work with a drier paint, or in other words, not adding so much water to it. I've got the little values a little bit different on the right and the left. So another way you can deal with that is just add water back to your paint on your painting, and then just dab it back out. It won't take it all out as 100%. You can't erase watercolor, but you can pull a lot of paint back off that way. I'm painting in the tires here. Again, figuring out the background. Now I used my paper towel to dab that again to make a little bit of a light and add the texture to the tires. I use a paper towel quite often to dab paint back off when I'm doing watercolor. When I'm doing acrylic, I go through a whole lot of paper towels also, but not to dab on the painting. So there I tried to use the watercolor pencil, but I wasn't really happy with how that it was looking, so I go back to my rigger brush. Here I'm again, you see I'm using the pencil, but I'm not all happy with how that was turning out. So now I'm back on the rigger brush, and I'm just going to paint it in. If you notice my left hand on my right hand a lot, I have essentials trimmers, and sometimes it's difficult for me to control my hand without it shaking. I found that if I keep my left hand on my right hand when I'm doing detail work, it calms that hand down. So if you suffer with essential trimmers, then it's a technique that you can try. Now you're starting to see that I'm starting to lay down the base color for the dog, and now I'm going back in and working on the shadows. Adding values and shadows is really the whole key to a painting. It's what makes it work. I really like children's illustration type paintings. They're the ultimate storytelling. I think it's much like Disney does when in their animated movies. I mean, you freeze a frame and you can just tell the story from a single frame. So here I'm using the hairdryer again, because I want to layer in again on top of it. And also, I want to make sure that my hand doesn't touch any wet paint underneath. If I'm painting and let my hand reach down there, I could use a bar across it or something to help me. I have that, but sometimes I just make sure it's good and dry, and then I can put my hand down on it. It would also probably be best if I was wearing a glove, and that way I wouldn't get the oils from my hand on the paper. But in this case, it really didn't have a problem with that. Now I'm using a waterproof pen. I'll put the pen in the description. I'll put all the supplies that I'm using in the description below. But now I'm going back in and doing some line work. It helps define the edges. Ideally, if I could find these pens in all the different colors that I use, I would prefer using the colors. And sometimes I use the rigger brush also to do line work. It really just depends on how I want it to look at that time. So now you can start seeing that the painting's starting to come together a little bit. I'm continuing to work on the shadow areas. Make sure there's a lot of contrast. And I want to make sure this kind of looks like some plants laying on the ground. This is just mostly just finish work right here. Adding a little bit of details and all. So this is the first time I've used this paper. This is also Winsor Newton paper. It is a cold press, about a 300-pound bond. It's got a texture to it that I really like. Kind of expensive paper. It's the first time I've used it. It ran me about $63, I think, for 20 sheets. So it's pretty expensive paper, but I really love how it's taken the watercolor. I mean, I'm really getting some vibrant colors out of it. Just like when I do my prints, paper really makes a difference on if I'm printing. Paper makes all the difference. So it's a good opportunity to tell you that about my new Patreon also. I do send out a free art print to each one of my Patreon members every month, and so be sure to check out that. So there it is. There's the final painting, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you come back and see more in the future. Thank you.